Today's episode is brought to you by HERdacity. HERdacity is a nonprofit inspiring confidence in women to achieve their professional goals. For resources, networking opportunities, and a strong community of women, visit herdacity.org to learn more.
Welcome to HERdacious, a podcast for audacious women. Welcome to HERdacious, the podcast for audacious women looking for a little bit of support on their career journey. My name's Lorelei, and today we're going to be talking about salary negotiation strategies and tools for women. Joining me in this conversation, we have best-selling author of Don't Leave Money on the Table and Navigating the Career Jungle, the president of Zero Gap, a professional development company dedicated to enhancing women's leadership in male-dominated spaces, Miss Jacqueline Twillie. Hey, Jacqueline.
Hi, Lorelei. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure to have you. I am really excited to have a conversation around negotiation because I feel like women are often at a disadvantage due to our general training and upbringing in most cultures.
Yes, I agree.
So I want to start off the conversation around confidence because in my personal and professional experience, I want to say that confidence is one of the largest challenges that women have standing their ground in negotiation. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, you're right, and research backs that up. There have been numerous studies that explore what hinders women from negotiating, and right behind not knowing what to say is the what if. What if I don't get it? What will people say? What will they think about me? And that whole what if is like a cousin to the confidence factor. Because if you're caught up in what if people think this of me, what will they say? Will they judge me? Then you internalize all of that, and that impacts the confidence for you to be able to advocate for yourself confidently.
Okay, so as we dig into negotiating confidently, let's talk about the do's and don'ts. Give me the go-to moves for negotiation.
Yeah, so let's go into the don'ts, and then I'll kind of like weave in the do's. So along the same lines of confidence is this whole thing of I need to be prepared to eat nails and to put my boxing gloves on and go into battle. So that's a don't, because negotiation is a conversation. It's not a battle. So
Okay.
Don't eat nails, don't put on boxing gloves, and it's not always a win-lose scenario. So the mindset of if someone wins, someone else loses, that is not the general theme of negotiation. Both parties can walk away with a win. So don't think that this is only a win-lose game. And then the next thing not to do in terms of don'ts is do not wing it. Don't think you can shoot from the hip in a negotiation and that you will get the most favorable outcome. So on the side of the do's, you want to be prepared because as I talk about in my book, Don't Leave Money on the Table, 80% of your negotiation is in your prep. And when you're prepared, you're able to make a well-informed decision. So the only way you, as a woman negotiating, can determine if a deal is good or if a deal is great is if you have the details. So you have to spend time preparing. And so this preparation is where you want to spend the majority of your time. So when I said don't wing it, this is what I mean. I want you to pull up those nitty gritty details. And a lot of times we can get in our own head and we create these grand scenarios. So instead of going on this thought process of this and that, just go and pull up as many facts as you can, whether that's talking to people in your network, speaking with people that are members of a professional association like you, using LinkedIn as a tool for you to be able to generate additional information. And from that, you can really begin to craft a negotiation strategies. One of the big mistakes that I see women make when they go into a negotiation is that they feel the need to over-explain, and they want to justify their requests to a point where it's to their detriment. So I like to describe it like this, that if you're in a store, back when we went into stores and we were shopping,
Oh, those were the days.
yes, if you wanted to purchase something and you asked a question about a product that was on the shelf, and they came over and they gave you the response, but then they kept going on. After you got your answer and you were ready to check out, and they're like, but oh, let me tell you this, and let me tell you this. You get to the point where you're like, shh, the heck with it, I'll just order it online, right?
Right.
We've all been there. So we can do the same thing in negotiation. We present our request, the thing that we want, and then we talk ourselves out of our own negotiation by justifying it, by saying, well, it's because this, and this, and it's because this, and this, and I was just thinking, blah, 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 blah. And at that point, the other person hasn't had an opportunity to get a word in, and now they're looking like, what are we even talking about? Are you prepared?
What do you think that stems from specifically for women?
It goes back to the confidence factor, because when you are secure in what you're requesting and you know that you don't have to justify these additional things, then you present your question and that's it. So think about this. When you're hungry and you want to eat, and let's say you're with your significant other or maybe a close friend, and you say you're in the car driving, and you tell that person, hey, we need to stop soon, I'm getting hungry. You don't then go on to say, because I'm hungry because I want food and this and that. It's just, this is what I want, and you leave it there. And whenever you get to an appropriate point, maybe you'll discuss what types of food you want, but you're not discussing why you're hungry anymore.
That's an excellent real life example of how we don't over explain regular things, but then we kick into over explanation mode in a professional setting because we feel like we have to justify our demands, our needs, our wants.
Yeah.
And I really do. I think you're right. I think it goes all back to confidence. How do you propose we level up on feeling more confident in these professional spaces?
So this is the core of what we do at Zero Gap, is helping women to lead unapologetically, right? So one of the ways that you do that is you get clear on what you want. And this goes beyond the surface of, why do I want this promotion, right? So if you can answer the question, why do you want the promotion? And I'm just using this as an example, then ask yourself again, why? Right? So get to the root of it. And sometimes this is an exercise of asking yourself something 3 times for you to dispel these myths that you created in your head, for you to debunk the mystification that we create from seeing headlines of 40 under 40 or 30 under 30, or just sensationalizing what we see on TV. And we really get to the core of, well, I want to be promoted because I want to make an impact. And because I know that I have a special skill set that can add value. And then you get to the core of it. And when you get to the core of it, you're not second guessing yourself as much because you have that assurance in why you want something. So to round this out and go back to your question about the confidence, how do we level up that confidence? It's about first having an increased level of self-awareness, and that doesn't happen overnight. This is something that each woman has to be very intentional about and check into this over the course of time to really be able to build this foundation of confidence and then build on that for each new level of leadership.
Besides confidence, do you think there are any other female-specific challenges in the negotiation game?
What comes to mind initially is there's some bias that has to be overcome. And so research also shows us that in representational negotiations, women kill it. If they're representing someone else, they will go to bat for that person and they will get what that person needs. However, when it comes to them advocating for themselves, they don't go as hard, they don't have as much vigor, and they tend to shrink back a little bit because it's kind of like tied to worthiness. Oh, should I be asking for this much? I don't want to be seen as being needy or being rude or asking for too much. So It's a big part of tapping into just saying, yeah, I can have this. And it goes back to confidence, right? Everything circles back to confidence, which is why I'm glad we started our conversation there. It just goes back to this whole factor of knowing what you want. So when women are representing others in negotiation, they can experience some bias, both from men and from women. So what we see is that when they're advocating for other people, it's more acceptable because of societal norms. So you have this element of, in the American society, that a lot of women grew up thinking that they had to be humble, or they had to be gracious, they had to raise their hand to be able to speak. So on the flip side of that, this is what we're taught as little girls in kindergarten. Raise your hand to speak, stay in line. You're rewarded for staying in this framework, in this box. But both men and women, we grow up noticing this, and we carry those things into our professional lives. So the way that this bias shows up is a woman speaking out of turn. So in a meeting or a Zoom call, instead of her raising her hand, she just says something. She can experience a bias of, oh, this woman is, and I'm going to use the most popular word that people like to label women, is that B word. She's this and she's that, right? And so that makes women want to shrink. So what happens is it's about debunking those myths, re-educating, and calling out those biases. So I'll give you one more example of something that's specific to women, but more specifically, as a Black woman, I know that I deal with this piece of bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, all the time. And it's this angry Black woman syndrome. So if I am passionate about something and I begin to speak with my hands because I love to speak with my hands, then it can be labeled as, oh, she's an angry Black woman. Well, no. What I am is I'm passionate about this area that we're discussing. So the way that I, as a woman, pull my power back from this bias, whether it is conscious or unconscious, is to say, I'm speaking with my hands because I am really passionate right now. And I go through other examples in the Don't Leave Money on the Table book, but those are just some specific things related to confidence and bias that go hand in hand.
I wonder if you could give us another example that women of color or LGBTQI identified folk might experience in negotiation.
So I want to stay in my lane. I haven't done any research on LGBTQI community members in negotiation. So I cannot speak with great confidence to their challenges. But I can give you another example. Asian women are typically stereotyped to say they're quiet, right? And so I have a lot of clients who are women of an Asian background, Asian American, and one of the challenges they face is that when they go into a boardroom to negotiate, that they are questioned about why they're at the head of the table in some cases. And these are the women who are making the decisions. So there is an initial bias coming into the room that, based on her gender and based on her race, that she is going to be meek, that she may be a pushover, and that they can get what they want, and they challenge her authority. And these women are extremely smart and powerful, and it is so powerful to see women step into their power, and they pull back those myths and they educate people as they go into negotiations. So here's one of the most powerful tools that I've seen my clients use in that scenario. They will go into the meeting, they claim their proper seat, and they take up space. So they may have an iPad, they may have a water bottle or a coffee, and they spread it out in front of them. And then the meeting begins. And that is a prime example of not creating a big fuss, but your body language carries a lot of weight in a negotiation. So when you're at a boardroom table, and we will go back to in-person negotiations at some point, claim your space. And that is a great way to claim your power without saying it, but you're showing it.
Love that. Well, we got to claim this next space for our sponsor, so we were going to take a quick break.
Hi, I'm Terry Broussard-Williams, the founder of Movement Maker, an online platform that inspires the change maker in you to set the world afire. For the tools to find the fire within yourself and to build movements within your community, visit movementmakertribe.com. Let's be HERdacious together.
And we're back with Jacqueline Twillie talking about negotiation tools and strategies. So, Jacqueline, I imagine that you feel that negotiation is a skill.
It is absolutely a skill.
How does one develop the skill?
So it's just like any other muscle. Let me give you the example of going to the gym. If you went to the gym for the very first time today and your goal was to have a six-pack, you would not walk out of that gym the same day expecting to have a six-pack.
That would be slightly unreasonable. Sure, yeah.
Right? So when we think about skills, we need to think of it like muscles. That if we consistently engage in exercises to strengthen those muscles, then we'll get the result. So when it comes to your negotiation skill, you have to think reasonably, like you said, of saying, okay, I'm going to develop the skill. I'm going to consistently practice exercising these muscles, and over the course of time, I will develop them. So inside of the book, Don't Leave Money on the Table, I introduced this framework that I've been using to teach women to negotiate all over the country. And so this framework, I call it a pre-negotiation checklist. And it's similar to like what pilots do when they fly. If they have years of experience, and let's say they've flown 4 other times that day, they're still going to go through their pre-flight checklist to ensure the smoothest flight possible. So with negotiation, you want to go through your latte framework, which is the negotiation framework that I just referenced, so that you can ensure the smoothest conversation possible each time. And so when you consistently engage in these different aspects, what happens is you are strengthening your skill, and over the course of time, you're going to see the results.
I imagine you have some best practices in regards to negotiation. How about in regards to negotiation during this fabulous economic situation we're all going through right now?
Yeah, so in terms of best practices, I'm going to dive into this framework that I referenced.
Okay.
So the latte framework has 5 steps, and this is the best practice that I tell everyone to follow. First step, L in latte, is look at the details, okay? As I mentioned earlier, 80% of your negotiation is done in the prep. So if you skip this phrase, you're doing yourself a disservice. The second step is A, anticipate your challenges, okay? So if you've ever been in a scenario where after the fact you've said to yourself, I should have said this or I should have done that, that means that you need to spend time in the anticipate the challenge phase. Because when you're prepared for the challenges and you have prepared multiple responses, you decrease the amount of times that you kick yourself in the butt later on that day. Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 3 is think about your walkaway point. This is especially important for every woman who is negotiating, because we sometimes feel that our current situation is so dire, i.e. the current economic environment, that we have to take whatever is offered. But that's not always to our benefit, okay? So think about what that walkaway point is and spend a considerable amount of time. And this is going to be different for each person. So you want to make sure that you're talking to the people you trust, like your significant others, your family members, mentors, etc., to establish your walkaway point. Now, step number 4 in latte is talk it through. If you're negotiating, let's say, for a $120,000 salary, but you've never said $120,000 before, what it sounds like is, in your head, you sound confident, but in reality, you sound like this. $120,000? And so it's all giggly and it's unsure and there's no confidence in it. So you have to use those first 4 steps and then say those things out loud before you have the conversation so that you understand how you sound and that you're presenting yourself in a confident manner. And then the 5th step of this framework is evaluate the options. So you have power when you are negotiating. You have the power to accept it or to walk away. don't think that, oh, I got the offer, I need to say yes right now. Take your time, take a few days, and think about it. Evaluate those options carefully, going through those first 4 steps again to give yourself the clarity and move beyond the feeling of excitement that you do have an offer to negotiate. So those are the best practices that every woman should negotiate using, especially in hard economic times.
Okay, let's recap for our listeners one more time. Latte, L.
Look at the details.
A.
Anticipate the challenges.
T.
Think about your walkaway point.
T.
Talk it through.
E.
Evaluate the options.
Love it. Ladies, we got a latte. All right, so for those of us with like a little bit of artist in us, does creativity play any role in negotiation?
Yes, creativity is a great tool for negotiation. So when you hear a no in negotiation, that is your signal to get creative. So you want to lean into power phrases, such as, have any exceptions ever been made? That's when you begin to get more information, and that's where you're able to tap into some creativity and say, oh, well, if that was the exception, then what about this? So you start throwing out some alternatives in the context of that conversation. So it doesn't matter if you're an artist or not. We can all tap into this skill of creativity for negotiations.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, give us some other tools when we go into the negotiation game. I love the strategy you mentioned about getting creative when you hear the no. That was a great reframe.
Yes, that is one of the tools that you use. I want to share some from the Don't Leave Money on the Table book, because one of the things that I love in terms of skills and tools is that you can piggyback on what other people have learned, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to recreate the wheel. Talk to people in your network. This is why being a part of a professional association is so important, because you can go to those women and say, hey, what have you done in a negotiation to be creative? What tools have you used? And so I'm going to share with you a few tools that you can use. In terms of picking up your salary, you can go to determine your market rate when you're negotiating a salary is salary.com, payscale.com, glassdoor.com. And those are just a few websites that are going to tell you, if you're negotiating your salary, what the market rate is. Now, the market rate is just what you get paid in a geographic area based on your skill set and also sometimes your education. So that is your starting point for all salary negotiations. Some other tools that you can use are professional association annual reports. So if you are a graphic designer or if you're a data analyst, some of the things that you can do is go to your professional association, read that annual report in terms of what's going on in careers, and that's going to give you leverage inside of your negotiation to talk about, one, your skills and also your expectations. And then another tool that is helpful in negotiation is having a checklist. Okay, so you can always go to your checklist to say, did I miss any of the details here? Am I getting all of the information that I need to make the best informed decision? So it doesn't matter if you've done this 10 times, if you've done it 15 times. Always rely on your checklist so that you don't miss any of the details.
Excellent. I love the checklist. Thank you so much. Now, a few times here in the past few minutes, you mentioned networking. How do networking and negotiation connect?
They go hand in hand because information is power. The more you know, the better informed decisions you can make. And there's sometimes a limit on what you can find online. You can be the best online researcher out there, but there's still going to be some details that you don't have access to. So how do you get that additional insight? How do you get those additional questions answered? You tap into your network. That's where you reach out to women you know in your industry who have previously been in your industry, tap into your mentors or your coaches, and you say, hey, this is a scenario. What can you share? I've done some research, but I'm a little unclear about this. What can you tell me? And so from those conversations within your network, that fills that missing gap in terms of preparing for your negotiation, giving you that additional insight. So someone could tell you something like, oh, Lorelei, I have a very strong relationship with someone who's telling me that that company is going to be bought out soon and that they may potentially reduce their workforce after they're bought out. So I might not move to that organization. That type of information you're not going to find online, but someone in your network may be privy to that and may tell you that information. That's going to save you a lot of money in the long run in terms of negotiating, because you don't want to accept a new job just to 6 months later be laid off. And unfortunately, I've seen far too many examples of something like that happening.
Right, especially here recently, I'm sure. How can we go about developing our network in a way that supports us through our career?
Such a good question, and something I love talking about. So in my first book, Navigating the Career Jungle, the first chapter in that book is called Savvy Networking. And I start that chapter by saying that networking is not about swapping business cards. It's about building mutually beneficial relationships. And these relationships, they're cultivated over a period of time. And it's not cultivated from, I met you today, tomorrow I'm asking something of you. It's cultivated by, I see you today and I speak to you in 2 months, and maybe you post something on LinkedIn that's intriguing and I engage with you in meaningful dialogue there. That's cultivating the relationships. So over a period of time of cultivating these meaningful relationships where you're not asking right out of the gate for anything, that's how you begin to cultivate a professional network. So by going to conferences or attending virtual events and following up with people afterwards, and just saying, for instance, if you attended a virtual event and the speaker was intriguing, sending them a LinkedIn request and saying, hey, Lorelei, I enjoyed what you shared about networking on that panel. That was really insightful. That is the entryway to building that relationship. So 6 months down the line, if you hear Lorelei speaking at something else, you can send her another message like, whoa, Lorelei, you are like so dynamic. Last time I learned this from you. This time I learned that from you. Now you've set the foundation for a relationship. And it's genuine. You know, we can all smell the smoke when someone's blowing it up your, you know what.
Yeah.
So, but something like that where they're given specific examples and it's not like an everyday thing, those types of relationships that can be cultivated even now in a virtual environment, but also in an offline environment.
So I want to talk to you real quick about the money.
Okay.
Okay, let's say we're in second round interviews and they start talking about money. How do we broach the topic of basically, like, let's be real, asking for more? Because you know they're not going to give you like the top price right up front. They probably want to pay you as the least amount possible just to get you in the door. So how do we start pushing back on that lowball offer?
So when you get a lowball offer, you need to go in confidently. How we started this conversation with confidence, right? Be prepared with the information. So I shared with you a few times now, 80% of your negotiation is your prep. You need to know the market rate. So if you do get hit with a lowball offer, the first thing that you should say in that scenario, and I give you a ton of examples of how to phrase things inside of a negotiation, inside the book, so you can remix it to your own language. But here's one of my favorite examples is, okay, I'm going to need to think about that, but also, when can I expect the written offer so that I can review all of the details? Okay, so you're not accepting right out of the gate. You're giving yourself some time and you're throwing the ball back in their court. That the negotiation, I don't really know what I'm negotiating on until I see it in black and white. Because we can talk all day, but it's only what's written down and what we sign that what matters. So you want to push back and find out when you're going to get that written offer. And so when you get that written offer, it's reasonable to have a few days to look over those details, and then you can go back and push back and counter and say, I've had an opportunity to review the written offer, and what I see here is kind of shocking. You know, that salary is below market rate. And I know that what I'm bringing to the organization is this and this, and I would love to have the conversation about being compensated around that market rate. So that's how you push back, is multiple steps. right? So the first thing is pumping the brakes, give me the written offer. The second one is let me have time to think about it. The third one is, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. And that's where you can show emotion, is by saying, I'm kind of shocked here. I thought I was going to get an offer at market rate.
Right.
And then the conversation can unfold from there.
In your experience, about how long does the negotiation process take on average? From interview to close the deal, you're hired, you're in the door.
You know, there's no average time, unfortunately, because each organization runs at their own pace and it's based on what's going on in the world. Here's the deal. I can tell you that I've seen things move very quickly and it's been a great opportunity. And I've seen things take 6 months and it be a great opportunity. As the woman who is negotiating, do not rush the process. Your ultimate goal is to get the best possible deal for yourself, even if that takes time. So when I mentioned in Latte, step number 3, think about your walk away point. Be willing to walk away, because if you walk away, if it's not what you want, they can come back 2 months later and give you what you wanted plus some. I've seen that happen a lot. So don't get tied down to a specific window of time. More focus on the total package of what you're receiving and making sure you're negotiating the best possible deal for yourself.
And to ask you another question about timelines, if we get an offer letter, what is a reasonable response rate for us, the applicant?
So if you get an offer letter and it's 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, acknowledge that email by the end of the business day. If you see it come through right at 10:30, do not respond right at 10:30, okay? Because part of your negotiation is you don't want to seem too eager. So if you see it at 10:30 a.m., they send it at 10:30 a.m., wait a few hours. Acknowledge it and let them know, hey, I'm going to review all of these details and I'll give you a call tomorrow or the following day, whatever that may be. So don't rush the process. Make sure you're giving yourself a chance to step out of the emotional excitement so that you can make a decision in clarity.
Excellent. And finally, I want to get any other resources from you that you would have for our listeners to both practice their negotiation skills and to feel more confidently around the negotiation process.
Such a great question. So one of my favorite resources for women, and I advise you to get your group of girlfriends together and head over to leanin.org, because they have a worksheet discussion and a couple of videos on negotiation. So you can watch those videos together with your girlfriends, download those worksheets, and you're able to role play and have those discussions together. Another resource that I find to be extremely valuable is doing an improv class, okay? So if you're doing improv, you're able to begin to think on the fly and respond in the moment, and to decrease some of the anxiety and stress around giving a quick response. It allows you to think on your feet. So right now there's a ton of improv classes that are happening over video chat features. So you can check those out. And then the third thing that I will tell you is pick up my book and my workbook, the Don't Leave Money on the Table book, and there's a companion workbook. And there's some videos on YouTube that are a companion to that. But one other thing, and I give this exercise in both the book and the workbook, is call your monthly service providers, like your homeowner's insurance, your car insurance, maybe your cell phone provider, and present this question to them. Am I getting the best deal? And just wait for a response. That activity is you building that negotiation muscle. So how we talked about going to the gym earlier, this is one of those things that you start doing it when the stakes are low. And then over the course of time, you get more comfortable presenting these questions.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You have given us both practical beginner level tools as well as pro level tools for when we grow into that skill of negotiation. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. This has been really powerful.
You're welcome.
And lastly, let's switch gears to today's Femme Fact. Well, as many of us are trying to find ways to do our part in supporting communities of color in America, including the Black Lives Matter movement, not all of us have the financial means to donate or the health care to help us feel safe in protesting. A great way to support the Black community is simply by spreading Black stories, Black voices, and speaking out when we see injustice and bias in the world, as many of us are doing already, both online and in person. Now, HERdacous wants to help you spread those messages with the utmost accuracy and respect. So today's Femme fact is going to be a quick crash course in the updated AP style book when referring to our Black peers in writing or in text. A hot debate in newsrooms across the country in recent years has been capitalizing the B in Black. Since the nationwide protests surged following George Floyd's death, the National Association of Black Journalists has urged newsrooms to implement the capitalization when writing about the Black community. In the words of AP's Vice President of Standards, Black with a lowercase b is a color, not a person. The new industry standard is the capitalized B, and it will honor the history, the identity, and the community for those who identify as Black, as well as the African diaspora. Along with the term indigenous, Black was previously one of the only ethnic terms with a lowercase first letter. The change follows the same capitalized naming convention that other ethnic groups such as Latino, Asian American, or Native American already have. Not only is this a coup for the Black community, but for indigenous communities across our nation and the world, which the AP Style Guide has also decided to capitalize. We can't understate how huge the step is for the journalist community, who largely abide by the recommendations set in the AP Style Guide. The news we consume influences our attitudes towards subjects. So when the media industry decides to implement a change like this that works to support, acknowledge, and uplift communities of color, it's quite a feat. We've already witnessed leading news organizations such as the Los Angeles Times, USA Today, and NBC News implement the capitalization in their copy since these protests started. Indication enough that we should uphold our civil responsibility to do so as well. So sending out that next tweet or IG post with links for resources, tips on change, and advocacy is so important in our fight for justice, and HERdacous wants you to be an ally and an advocate in the best way possible. So the next time you're crafting that post, about to send out a tweet, or writing an article for your university, remember that if you're talking about a person in the Black community or specific people, that's Black with a capital B. Now, we trust that these seemingly small actions add up over time, and they make a difference in the world around us. We know that change is possible, and it is happening in real time. So right now, it's really important that we don't back down. We take stock of the changes, we adapt to the new environments, and we continue being audacious and inclusive together. I want to thank our guest today, Jacqueline Twillie, for joining us and adding her powerful voice to the conversation around empowering women, specifically in their careers and around the money table. Jacqueline, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lorelei.
It's been a pleasure to have you. This has been HERdacous, and I'm Lorelei. I'm really proud you chose to join us today. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and share with a friend. You never know what information they might be missing out on and can really find some fuel for their fire. Until next time, adieu.